I'll read through, once you have to, I'll read through the list.
Okay, I have a note that says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube. So we'll call
Yep.
it the meeting of the,
It's not live yet.
so okay. The note I have says it is, but apparently not.
We are now.
We are now. All right. So I'll call the meeting to order of the Bond Oversight Committee meeting for Monday, April 26, 2021. And Tom is going to call the roll to establish a quorum.
Ellen Bass. You see a thumbs up. Austin Polnaghy.
Here.
Brad Black.
Present.
Henry Louvert.
Henry shows on the screen, but he's muted.
Oh.
There he is.
There's Henry. Jennifer Rickard.
Here.
And anybody see me?
Not yet.
Kevin Cronin.
Let me see. Oh, the camera.
Here.
Marianne Hanson.
Here.
Phil Barnhart.
Here.
Sally Storm. Sally Storm? No. Roger Bennett?
Here.
Amanda Blunt?
Here.
Claire Dannenbaum?
Here.
Jeremiah Vandergrift?
Present.
All right. So we have 10 out of 11. I think that establishes a quorum for us. It was noted in the bit of conversation before we actually went public that we have left out the approval of the minutes. What's your pleasure? Do you want to amend the agenda to allow for approval of the minutes, or shall we consider them next time?
This is Austin. I make a motion to amend the agenda to include the approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion moved and seconded. Discussion. Any objection to amending the agenda to allow for the approval of the minutes of the last meeting? I don't hear any objections. So we'll amend the agenda for the purpose of approving the minutes. Is there any kind of discussion of the minutes in order to for a motion to approve or not? Austin, do you have a motion?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that, Chair?
It's in order now to move to approve the minutes.
Oh, I thought we had to add it to the agenda first.
And that's been done.
Oh, yeah.
There was no objection, so I just ordered that it was done.
Okay.
So we still need a motion to approve the minutes.
Bennett approves the, moves approval.
All right, it's been moved.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion of the minutes? Anything that we need to do to the minutes?
Yeah, where are the minutes? Because they're not on the agenda.
Yes, they're in the last meeting, which you can find in board docs. So just go to past meetings and you'll see them there. And I would like to just say as well, I'm taking the notes. And so Phil, when somebody says, when they make a motion, if you could say who says that, that would be very helpful for me because I can't see who's doing that. So who moved to approve them?
Roger did.
Okay, thank you.
And Austin made the earlier motion to amend the agenda. Okay. Now, if people haven't had a chance to review the minutes yet, can we expedite things by moving them to the end of the agenda and doing it then, so you have a chance to look? Any objection to that? Kevin objects. Okay. So, Kevin doesn't object. Okay. that was a it's okay wave rather than I object wave. All right. Without objection, we'll put off the approval of the minutes toward the end of the agenda. Please help me remember that we've added them to the end. And that will allow people a chance to review them who want to do that. And we'll go on to the message from the board.
And that would be me, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. My name's Lisa Fragola. I'm the current chair of the LCC Board of Education. Thanks so much for being here on this lovely evening. And just have to say, you are all running your meeting here much more stringently than sometimes we run our LCC board meeting. But I hope that doesn't make you worry about us. But seriously, it's really hard to believe that it was almost a year ago that we successfully passed the LCC bond. I know this last year has seemed to stretch on forever, but it was really only last year that we had the bond on the ballot. And I know that very clearly because we had to switch the bond campaign midstream from a typical campaign to a pandemic campaign. So it really, I feel, was a big accomplishment to pass this bond. And it really represents the way in which citizens in Lane County appreciate and value the college. And I know all of you spoke of that in your interviews to be part of this committee. So the LCC board really takes seriously the community's passage of the bond and the investments that'll make in the college. And so there were two really important pieces the bond passed as part of honoring this investment in the college. One was the Bond Oversight Committee. And that was the board's commitment to there being transparency and accountability in this process because our taxpayers are investing their dollars, their earnings in the college. This second important piece the board passed as part of honoring this investment in the college was the Community Benefits Agreement, which is the board's commitment to making sure that we invest locally, we invest in Lane County, that we invest in a way that's going to energize the community that is again paying the taxes that are going towards this bond. So again, we really appreciate you serving on the Bond Oversight Committee. You have an important role as an advisory committee to the board, and you're charged with reviewing upcoming projects and the progress on the projects that were detailed in the bond. We are hoping that an annual report will be included in this role, but even more importantly, even though it's the board's role to make decisions on bond projects, this committee has an important role in ensuring that the college keeps the promises that were made to Lane County residents in our bond campaign. For example, our commitments to safety, security, and accessibility, investing in the college to make sure that buildings and walkways are accessible and that the campus is safe. The commitment to workforce retraining and career technical education, that LCC students have updated learning spaces and technology for programs, including the new health professions building, which will bring the LCC dental clinic back. And the commitment that these investments are student focused, and really invest in not only the fiscal health of the college, but in ensuring that students have access to a 21st century education. So again, thank you. And I did want to address one question that I have heard from some people, which was that why isn't there a board member serving on this committee? And that's because we do feel that it's important that you are autonomous from the board. And we look forward to the work that you'll be doing. And we look forward to the report. And we're very excited about some of the projects you're going to start digging into, which probably one of the first will be the health professions building. So a lot of things to be excited about. And I will be here for, part of the evening. I won't participate, but I just wanted to see how things are going. So thanks for allowing me to join the meeting.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation. So our next item is the vice chair election. You're aware, of course, that we have a vice chair. Can someone explain why we're doing this again now? And then we'll see if we can have an election.
Mr. Chair, I believe our vice chair is joining the LCC board.
Yes, that is correct. And I guess I was told at the leadership meeting that we held to plan this event that once you're on the board, you're not on this committee anymore. So that's where we are. So unless there's some objection, I'm going to open nominations for the board or for the vice chair position. And my suggestion, because we're a small group, is that if you're interested in that position, you nominate yourself.
Yeah.
Don't all speak at once. And of course, you can nominate someone else as well.
Mr. Chair, this is Roger Bennett.
Roger.
I would be honored to serve in that position if nominated.
Roger is self-nominated. Anyone else? Long pause. It would be in order for a motion to elect Roger by acclamation if you're so inclined.
This is Austin. I so move.
Austin moves that we elect Roger by acclamation. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any, that's Brad?
right.
Is there any objection to the motion? Long pause. No objection. Motion carried. Congratulations, Roger. Vice Chair. All right, next item. I hope we took less than 5 minutes. Managers updates. Thomas.
I think that is me. So I'll just say, hopefully you folks have read through a lot of the documents. I can pull things up if need be, but I don't know that I want to go line by line through anything here unless there's really a need. Just to give you a background to how this quarterly report got put together, a little background about my role as well. I joined the university or the campus, the college in September. And at that point, there had been quite a bit of work by President Hamilton and other staff to define a range of projects or commitments for the $125 million. It basically took those varied lists and promises and trying to read through the promises in the voting material and established roughly 30 projects that you see on here, as well as allocations of funding that were promised along the way, aggregated into something that could be managed as a group of projects. The total of the funding here represents about 87% of the total funding available. I've held that, about 13% for a contingency fund, knowing that we have many years to go on this and things that will come up with any of the best laid plans when we're dealing with construction and that type of work. With the quarterly status report, what I've tried to do is work with each of these, say roughly 30 projects or project initiatives that I've put together, taking a guess at when I think we'll be able to attack it or start the project, a projected time of finish. So you'll see some that actually don't start until 2025 and don't end, things end up in October 2028 is the overall target to finish things up. So those are the first two columns. I've allocated a budget. As I mentioned, most of that came through the notes that I received from Jennifer Hayward, from Dr. Hamilton and others that were involved in the administration and the planning of this before I came. One of the things that I'm trying to implement and hope to be able to keep with each of these projects as we get started is to develop a 1 to 2 page charter that is just a high level. Perhaps, hopefully you've read some of those that we've done already. So in the status report, you'll see a line for an active charter. And I look at this quarterly report as just a real quick dashboard. So you'll see green, red, and yellow flag, basically a stoplight, pretty straightforward to understand. So when I look at this, we do have 2 red flags on active charter. That is for resurfacing the track and the building 6 roof replacement. I've listed those as red because they're basically already complete. Those were done before I arrived. So I'm not going to go back and write a charter for those things that are complete, but just want to do that. The yellow ones that you see here are ones that working on at one form or another, or are coming up so that we're starting to formulate those. With the charter, we go through a little bit more proofing of that nature of this stuff. The next line on here is just a project phase, and I've broken it down into roughly 8 phases, ranging from pending, where we haven't started, to ongoing, to completed. Generally, projects for the construction will range through, start with a feasibility, go into concept and design, into construction, close out, and then complete. So you'll see those parts change as we go along here through each quarter. Hopefully a couple of them make a little bit of progress as we move through this. And then the next 3 rows, for me as a project manager, I see 3 critical legs for the success of a project. There's scope, schedule, and budget. Those 3 things interlock, they tie together. For the most part, we're in pretty good shape so far. I do have a couple of some spots that are listed as yellow because we, you'll notice that it's, many of those have a note next to them that says emergency remote learning. We are a little bit behind schedule due to the impacts of COVID on campus, where we haven't gotten to classroom modernization quite the way we might have thought of as the bond was originally planned. Some other things about that classroom accessibility, those types of things. Without students here, it hasn't been quite, the pressure has been to get the students back to make sure they're functioning with the programs we have, but we are working towards those. With that, I'll pause and see if there are questions or comments.
Perhaps I missed it. I was going to ask, what's the difference between the triangle and the circle? Is it just simply that you just are you matching those just simply with the colors? It's not.
They're matched with the colors because I know that colorblind, those that are disabled and colorblind can't necessarily see the colors. Actually, I had a boss that was a problem, so that you'll see the red, yellow, and green do have a different shape. So that was a very intentional decision.
Okay,
or if you print it in black and white, you can see that difference.
Okay. That was Jeremiah. Other questions?
And I may have missed that too, but where is the
Marianne?
legend that indicates what the triangle's for, what the circle is for? Is that on the?
It is in my head. I apologize for that. I will get a legend on here.
And the triangle indicates,
The triangle is a yellow caution.
yeah, oh, caution, okay. And the
So-
green go,
The green is
Got it.
go, and I don't have any reds on here fortunately yet,
okay,
but I think that's a square when I do that, so.
okay.
So let me interpret one of these items and you tell me if I'm even close. If we look at parking lot maintenance, it looks like everything is ready.
Yep,
The third item. And if we go down a bit and we look at IT classroom modernization, it looks like scope and schedule have not yet been finished, but the budget is. Is that a reasonable way of interpreting that line?
yes, that is. On those two, we haven't, because of the other activities that we're doing, IT hasn't focused on the classroom work as much as doing some of the other IT work with people off campus.
Well, with our experience in the last year, it makes sense to do a little more planning before you start building classrooms.
Yeah, so we do hope to have some things done before students return, but it is where we're at.
Right. Right. Oh, any other questions for Tom? Tom, does this complete your report?
That completes my, yes, this line for the quarterly status update.
For this line, and of course, your next item is to talk about the 2020 bond major capital projects construction schedule, which I assume is that other chart
Yes,
With all-
another chart.
with all the lines on it.
Yeah, it's a Gantt chart, and it is that will continue to grow as we get more projects into it, but it covers, I can remember which, I have it here, covers the core projects that I'm working on now, trying to break down, design, planning, construction, and get that. As I put together a schedule, I try and overlay, one, make sure we have these projects that line up together, but also trying to spread them out a little bit because we have a limited amount of staff and want to try and line occupancy up for various academic periods so that they can move in or out at ideally a quarter break or over the summer. But also balance them out because there's a lot of staff time in setting up and moving into a new building or out of a building as we start construction, both from the faculty and staff that work in those buildings, as well as our facility staff and that work on helping people move, things like that. So that's part of my planning tools is to try and lay that all out. And I'm also trying to balance out requests for proposals and design strategies with, when I'm putting those out for the design and construction community out here. So I don't put a whole pile of them out there at the same time. My goal ideally is that for a design request for proposal, I close one out before I open up another one. And for a general contractor, the same type of thing, so that while those two may alternate back and forth, the idea is that the community out there, the construction community knows whether they're at least in the final goes for one project before I release the next RFP and they start writing it up so they can determine if they have a team, whether they can put the same people on it or not. That's been one of my things I've learned over the years is to stagger some of that to help our local community and encourage more participation that way.
There's
About
always,
that. I have a question about that, Tom, if I could
Sure.
interject.
please.
What happens when we get design proposals from the community? Where do they go on campus? Who reviews them and who decides who reviews them?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So what we do, we put together a committee as we form this. I'm usually on them as the leader of it. We try and get, depending on the scale or the scope of the project, we have, I try and shoot to four to six members. Sometimes it's a little, for a larger project, it might be a little better. Usually it's about half facilities staff, myself being one of those. The other half is from the user group. So the academics, I'll give you an example for the health professions building, which we'll talk about more. I had 3 people. We had our campus mechanical engineer, myself, and a project manager from our side. And then from the user group, we had the dean, as well as I think 3 of his academic leaders or departmental leaders on that committee. Those come in, we review them with a scoring sheet that is detailed. The state outlines what we can score with, and that is provided in the request for proposals. We weigh those out, individually score them, select 3 to 4 firms for interviews, go through an oral interview presentation with them, and again score them, and then present a ranking of those top firms to our purchasing group. The top firm, we work to get a cost proposal for the state requirements and take that cost proposal to the board for their approval.
Thank you for explaining all of that.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, and I'm assuming as a part of that process that you're doing a lot of input from the people who raised the issue in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there might be staff, there might be community members, students or faculty or anybody, depending upon what the issue is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Claire, does that answer your question? Yeah. Please go ahead, Tom.
I'll open it up to other questions.
Great.
Yeah, Tom, this is Brad Black. A question. I think the idea of spreading things out over time makes sense.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you deal with, let's say you have one architectural engineering firm who gets one project, but also, puts a good case together that they should do the next one. How do you not hold the first project against them in the evaluation for the second one? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And it is, having done this for many years, it's always a challenge. And
it is.
Part of what we do when we do the request for proposals is ask what the staff is.
Okay.
So they have to propose what staff it is. And, it's one thing if the principal of the engineering firm is the same on all of them, makes sense. But when they start repeating the entire staff, it is something that becomes discussed by the committee members. We'll leave it at that. And, that goes into the scoring, because one of the scoring potentials is, the quality of the firm, the members of the staff, how much, we do ask, what is your workload? Do you have the capability to do that? So it does help to spread things out.
Yeah, I was involved in a situation with the city where we had the same firm doing several projects and they overcommitted, and you don't want to go there. So I appreciate
No, I've done it. I fear the same thing on the construction side sometimes too, particularly with subcontractors.
Oh yeah.
I have had problems with that where they were stealing staff from one of my jobs to take it on to a different job. And it leads to a few conversations with leadership of those firms.
Yes. And there had those conversations. So I think you're on the right track. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Other questions? I would simply note that I appreciate this idea of staggering the work. You're more likely not to overwhelm the local capacity. And I don't mean for one firm, but in general.
Yeah.
and therefore increase the likelihood that the work will actually be done by people who live in the community and therefore have a built-in interest in having the work done in a way that will benefit the community in the long run. Right. Okay. Are we ready to go on to the next item?
Sure.
I don't see any action items on this, and I think if I'm reading the agenda right, you're still up for a community benefits agreement.
Actually, I think I'm going to pass that to Jennifer Hayward.
Okay.
So she's been working on that one as a lead, but I'm happy to take questions if need be. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hayward, Facilities Director, and I'd like to start by just giving you a brief reminder of the board's community benefits agreement. And I'll share my screen in a moment, but just in case you want to navigate to it on another screen, click on Library on the top right of Board Docs, and then click on Bond Oversight Committee, the plus sign, and then it's the very last item you can select under Bond Oversight Committee, LCC Board Resolution 637, Community Benefits Agreement. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for those who don't want to navigate to it.
Right.
And I will. Can you see the a website? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just go over this quickly. The tenets of the board's resolution for community benefits are promoting and prioritizing local procurements, materials and goods, prioritizing jobs that pay a prevailing wage and prioritize full family health benefits, prioritizing diversity and equity in the workforce, incorporating sustainability objectives, and renewable energy, require the use of apprenticeships, and that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share. And then the next, if you could click on Exhibit B, which is in your agenda area, and then scroll down about half to page 3 out of 4 in the document to Section B. So Exhibit B is a contract instrument that we're using for all of our construction contracts, but we added Section B of Exhibit B to go over how we're explaining to contractors and architects how we're implementing the community benefits for our projects. So the first section in B is Section 1. Sorry, there's so many letters and numbers here. And that's for architect and engineer, or in other words, professional services contracts. So for those, in order to meet the sustainability objective, we're asking the companies that are proposing to us to have their own commitment to sustainability. So their method of ensuring us that they will commit to sustainability on our project is to show us that they've already committed to it in their own business. So they're going to be required to submit their company's climate action plan or a similar sustainability plan as part of their proposal package. And then proposers, in their proposal, they're going to be required to talk about their strategies for promoting how designers, how architects can help us promote and prioritize sourcing materials and goods locally, and utilizing local businesses. So ways they can do that is to, on a lot of the products that would go into our buildings, they can make sure that they're specifying products that can be purchased locally, because a lot of products can't be, but a lot can. So, and not every product is going to be purchased locally, but they can help us move towards that goal and purchase as many products as possible locally. It looks like we accidentally have a repeat on item A and C, so we'll need to correct that, but I'll just move on for now. And then Section 2 is about how we're implementing the projects with construction companies. So right now we have that we're doing this on contracts that are valued at 1 million or greater, and that is because we're mimicking how Lane County is implementing the same resolution that the Lane County Commissioners passed, and they're currently doing it on projects 1 million and greater. Lane's board has a desire to see that number drop, and I believe we'll be talking about that at future board meetings. But for the moment, we're saying 1 million or greater. The community benefits will be implemented on construction projects that are 1 million or greater in cost. So the following items will apply to prime contractors and major subcontractors, that they'll be required to pay the living wage that's listed here. And again, this is copying how Lane County is implementing this resolution. Pay full family health care with no employee premiums. Participate in an apprenticeship program. Provide OSHA 10 training for all permanent full-time trades workers. And the first three items, the living wage, the full family health care, and the apprenticeship program, are all mimicking how Lane County is implementing this. The OSHA 10 training is going a step beyond. This is not required by Lane County, but we are putting it into our documents. And then next, that the contractor has to submit documentation proving that they've done all of these things. And yeah, that sums that up. And then the next section is that the prime contractor shall set aside subcontractors with a dollar value of $50,000 and under for minority and women-owned businesses, but we are encouraging them to set goals for more than just those contracts, but that would be the minimum. And then we found out from our legal counsel, we checked with Lane's internal legal counsel, as well as Lane County's and the Oregon Community College Association legal counsel, on whether we can give preference to hiring local companies, and we cannot. That is not allowed by Oregon law. But what we are doing is we're asking the prime contractor to track and report the location of the subcontractors' businesses and the workers' residents. So that way, at least we'll know what percent of subcontractors and workers do live in Lane County. And also track the location from which materials are sourced. So again, per the legal counsels that I mentioned, we're not allowed to require contractors to purchase materials locally, but we can, the things that we can do are A, we can specify materials that can be purchased locally, and we can require them to track where materials are purchased from. And hopefully we'll see a good trend towards local subcontractors, local workers, and local materials. So for construction contracts, we'll be utilizing two different types of construction contracts on this bond. One is a design bid build, where the architect writes the entire drawings and specifications for the project, and then we put it out and companies bid on it. And legally, we're required to take the lowest responsive bid. And then the other type is a construction manager, general contractor type contract, where we do use that RFP process, which Tom talked about some in the last section, where we put out a request for proposal for construction manager, general contractor firms, and then they provide us with information about their experience and qualifications and ability to implement the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement. And then we score them just like how Tom described before, and the top scoring firm will be recommended to the board. So we have a little bit more wiggle room when we're doing a CMGC project, which we will be doing on quite a few projects to implement the CBA. We can ask them to promote and prioritize sourcing materials and hiring companies locally. And so that's what we'll be doing. And we'll also be asking them to submit their company climate action plan to show us, again, if you want to be serious about implementing sustainability on this project, show us that you're serious about it within your own company. And that's going to be a factor for them getting a job with us. And then moving on to section 3, at the moment, for projects under $1 million, we're not fully implementing the CBA. But we are doing the few things listed here, which is requiring that subcontractors set aside the smaller contracts for women and minority-owned businesses as much as possible. And that they also document the locations of the subcontractors' businesses as well as their workers' residences, and provide us with that documentation. And same with providing us with the documentation from which materials are sourced. And documentation about the recycling and sustainability efforts. And we are trying to, I mean, it's not listed here, but we are obviously trying to incorporate sustainability themes and initiatives into every project. And I think I covered it. So let me know if you have questions.
Questions?
I see Claire's hand.
Claire, please.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a great overview. I read all this material in advance of the meeting, trying to tease out where the requirements from Resolution 637 for D, prioritizing diversity and equity in the project workforce. I was trying to figure out where that language translates into some of these documents, and specifically the limitations on what I see or perceive as currently limitations on creating a more equitable framework by which we would choose either designers or contractors. And I don't know all of the professional language around the different contracts, but it felt to me that the smaller projects were being designated as places where we could then try to capture more diversity and equity in our representation of designers and builders, but none of the large scale projects would have that requirement. And I don't
well,
feel
except
great
in the
about that.
subcontractors. But no, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you. You finish your thought.
Well, I guess I don't feel great about that because a big part of the work of this committee, I believe, is to figure out how we would implement more equity, diversity, and inclusion in these large scale projects. And we, up to date, yet have not been asked how we might do that, or who's going to decide how it is implemented, or even input on it. So we've been getting a lot of information that feels like it's already digested to me, and it's not showing to my eyes, and maybe I've misinterpreted the documentation, but it's not showing to me that we are actually prioritizing equity and diversity in the project workforce.
Yeah, I agree with you. The documentation that you saw does look like that. And I'll address the few areas that you talked about separately. So the first one that I heard you say was workers on a project, prioritizing diversity in the workforce. And unfortunately, according to our legal counsel in Lane Counties and Oregon Community College Association, we're not allowed to do that per the law. And I'm not a lawyer, and I can't really speak to the reasons why, but I think that probably at the next meeting, we could bring our attorney and talk about that. And then when you're looking at a design, well, let's talk about the RFP processes, because there are RFP processes for design teams and for construction manager, general contractors. And you're right, we didn't do a good job of describing how we could prioritize diversity in those hiring processes. And I think that we could get some input from you, and we could go back and scratch our heads and try to think about how to do better with that. I mean, so I think there's room there for improvement. And then on the design bid build projects, I'm not seeing where there's room for improvement, because it's kind of one of those things where we have to put out the project and get the bids and accept the low bidder. But we can do things, and maybe we can put this in our exhibit, or I don't think it would be appropriate for the exhibit. I think it would be appropriate for a different document, and it would be great, again, to get your all's input on this. But what we could do is try to do a really great job with advertising our projects with organizations and associations that work with minority and women-owned businesses to encourage them to apply. So that's one idea off the top of my head, but I'd love to hear other ideas too.
I just wanted to add before we move on to other raised hands that I don't mean for this to be a criticism of the incredible work that you've done. I just want to be sure, I mean, that's why this oversight committee is here. And I don't want us to just be a rubber stamp. I want us to actually internalize some of what it takes to move the needle on creating more equitable approach to spending these huge amounts of money, which would
Absolutely. Yeah.
distributed into our community. And I think keeping it local is critical, and distributing it more effectively according to diversity goals is really critical. So thank you.
Marianne and then Kevin, please.
First of all, I thought that our charge here was to provide oversight of the financial oversight. And I do think that the state, that is Lane Community College, has oversight, but Lane Community College has oversight by the state in regards to DEI. And I would like to know, Claire, what you believe equity is in the context of this meeting.
Claire, is that something you want to respond to?
I guess I want to clarify if you mean equity in how this meeting functions, or equity in the content that we're discussing, which is trying to create more equitable distribution of funds for projects.
But is that our charge?
I believe that the resolution 637 implies that whereas now therefore D, we prioritize diversity and equity in the project workforce. That's just spelled out. I didn't write that. I'm just trying to understand how we're going to implement that.
Right.
I think that is up to staff and Tom Goodhue, and it is our task, as I understand it, to monitor these projects and report back to the communities that we represent.
And to the board. Kevin?
Hey, so we're looking at doing one of these community benefits agreements at where I work, Homes for Good. And in preparation to talk about that, we actually were stumped by a similar question. And so I did a quick Google and review of, 10 of the largest construction contractors in the area. And some of them are really good on this issue, and some of them don't even really try at all. And so I really think that it's a really good point to bring up and point out. And I definitely think we should do our best to work with the companies to either, if we have to be encouraging, maybe we take that route. But either way, I want to make sure that we reach out to these companies that are hitting the nail on this head, because I think there's a real opportunity. And everybody knows that women face a really high rate of attrition in the trades. And so this project is one of those places where we can actually make progress on this.
Yeah, I think the next person is Roger. You'll need to go off.
I'd offer that, in as much as we've already gone to the extent of asking the bidder or the proposer to make statements on certain policies regarding employment and purchasing in the local area, we could also ask them to submit their plan for DEI. and to do this. I think it's a critical issue. I think we're all absent. If you remember, in our preparatory material for the first convention of this committee, there was a rather strong statement by the board, by the college, about commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't think we can let the ball drop here. I think it's part of the basic responsibility for every public institution to look to this issue. And if we don't know anything more than push the envelope even a little bit by asking for a plan on DEI from the proposer, we've taken a first step. So I think Claire's on the right track.
Okay.
I wasn't suggesting that Claire wasn't on the right track. I was trying to clarify what our position here is on this oversight committee.
Is it appropriate now for us to refer this conversation to Jennifer and Tom and ask them to bring back additional proposals? And of course, I don't know if that's the right approach at this point, but I'd like to make sure we have the conversation that we need here, and then that we operationalize some way of getting a response at the next meeting. Jennifer?
You do have a couple more hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've missed them. Where are they?
Henry and Brad and Marge.
Marge as well has had her hand up for a while. So
I'm sorry. Why am I missing Marge? Okay, there she is, way at the top. All right. Please.
I thank you all. Those are wonderful comments. These are things we stress over appropriately. I just want to let you know that we have a diversity officer on campus, Greg Evans, and a big part of what he does is he guides us. He helps us with issues like this. So you do just like you do with any search when you're looking for people, when you're looking for businesses, you do a reach out. And that's how we level the playing field, or we try to, when you personally reach out to these companies and you give them information on what the process is. But we would do this with everybody, but we make sure that companies are all contacted, whether it's small business, women, people of color. We want to reach out. The one thing that Greg continues to tell us, though, is these businesses with either women-owned or owned from persons of color tend to be more in the Portland area for the larger contracts. So there is a push-pull between hiring locally and versus Portland. Although, as it was said very well, we can't give points for local. We can for being in the state. So there's a fine balance, and I personally think Jennifer's comments on pushing hard to make sure that they are subcontracting, am I using that term rightly? To subcontracting, hiring women, people of color locally. We have a better shot at that, I think. So we're still learning about this, and we'll certainly bring more information back.
Great. And was there another hand that I missed?
Henry.
I'm sorry, Henry, you're up. And you're on mute.
I was listening to what Kevin said, and you got companies that take it serious and those who don't make any effort. Is there a way to rate or grade the different companies on their effort so that maybe there's some motivation for them to improve their status? Because if there's nothing to motivate them, why would they do it if there's no consequence? And the other companies that are making efforts, what's their reward? So we have to come up with some kind of way to evaluate them and at the same time motivate them through that evaluation.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Brad is the last person.
Brad, and then Mary Ann.
Yeah, I've been down this road a bit when I worked at the city, and I guess, what I hear is the staff has a commitment to dealing with the issue of women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. I think in a way, it's best that responsibility be left with the staff to sort out and then describe how they're doing it. And us just be aware of it, because the pitfalls of trying to get around some of the state laws about public purchasing, they just don't allow some of the things that folks would like to do. And again, there's been some creative ideas here that could be explored, but I think it's best explored by the staff, and they bring us back what the legal counsel says is defendable from the college's point of view.
And Mary Ann, you had another point?
I just quickly looked up the Lane Community College Bond Oversight Committee is charged with reviewing progress on the projects detailed in LCC bond measure approved by voters May 20. The committee shall review progress and monitor board bond spending and schedules. A written report shall be prepared and presented to blah, 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 blah. I feel like we could get bogged down in monitoring DEI when this is a staff college charge. However, that said, in our reporting, in our gleaning of this information, it would be helpful to have that information so that when we go back to the communities that we are representing as members on this board, we can also include that data.
Thank you. Let me add a comment of my own. This is not an area in which I have and claim any expertise at all, but I will tell you that several times in the legislature, very complex issues came up involving precisely these points we're discussing today. I will tell you, they gave me headaches trying to understand them and trying to figure out what the limitations were. Of course, it includes everything from the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution and all the way down to some of the other issues that we've been discussing. And I have to agree with Brad's point that the way you deal with many of these issues is to trust staff to consider them and to look at them and to make recommendations to the board about them, and then follow what Mary Ann just said about what our job is. I wish I could be more specific than that, but I don't claim expertise, and I think even the people who do recognize there are a bunch of minefields in dealing with these issues. Other discussion on this point?
Claire has her hand raised.
Claire, please.
I have my hand raised. This is Claire again. With all due respect to the expertise in this group of people and all of the opinions expressed, my primary concern is that we have conversations about the implications of trying to create a more equitable system for construction, RFP, and design on our campus. I'm not attempting, or do I suggest, that we remove the authority of these decisions to the people who are the experts, which is Tom and Jennifer, etc. But I do think, even having had this 6-minute conversation about it, we've already generated a couple of great ideas, and we could have another conversation in which we brainstorm other ideas about how we might improve this process in the future. I do not think that is out of the purview of our charge in reviewing or rubber stamping or seeing to the fact that these processes are adhered to in a legal fashion. And that could be a subcommittee of this group, or it could be just a group of people that want to have a chat informally about how the college might do this. But if we just believe that the systems that are in place are going to change the system in place, that's incorrect, as we've seen. So we do have to change our systems somehow in order to get different outcomes. And I don't mean to be hammering on everybody about this, but I do think it's a conversation worth having. So sorry I took so much time.
May I simply say I agree with your point that it's a conversation worth having, very much so. Other conversation on this, other discussion on this point? Now I've lost track of where we are. I think we're down to projects, goals, and objectives.
I believe you're right.
Okay,
So that's me again.
and
I'm
that's you
Tom.
again. And
So-
my agenda says that there are basically 4 items to talk about on here. Have I got that right? Maybe not. Maybe there are more. Go ahead, Tom, please.
Yeah, for project goals and objective, this is where my 4 project charters that I have up here. And again, I don't want to go through all of them. I'll give you a quick status or in description of each of them, the way they're listed. The Florence Center, that is one that we are in the architecture engineer selection process right now. Hope to be taking a recommendation to the board next month on a selection for that. That project will look at the Florence Center, and it is a building that was done in the 1970s with some additions since then. Kind of a tired building that the ocean breeze has taken its toll on. And we're looking at really doing some major, the big focus is building systems. We believe we've applied for a seismic rehabilitation grant that will match funds. If we get approval for that, that's $1.5 million that'll add to it. So seismic stability is one of the things on that building there. But looking at virtually all the mechanical and electrical systems along with the seismic stability, looking at building security on that building, trying to make sure, and those will require some changes, in doors and windows, locking systems. Also looking at changing the grounds a little bit for security and safety, just to, the forest has kind of encroached in on that. And we do have situation where people tend to like to camp in the woods. So we're looking at making sure that's safe. So there'll be some lighting upgrades and some other things that we're doing. We're still determining that. But that's the core of that one. Next project is the Health Professions Building, which we do have a architect working on. It's Robertson Sherwood Architects out of Eugene they have a partner, Van Architects out of Portland.
Tom, could I interrupt for a question?
Sure.
On the Florence Center, I have to apologize and admit I'm not sure where it's located. And I'm wondering if there are issues having to do with the possibility of tsunami. If it's up on the hill, obviously not, but if it's right downtown, maybe yes.
It's not in the tsunami zone. It's not up on a hill, but it is far enough away.
It's far enough away, okay.
It is adjacent to the high school.
Okay.
If you know where that is. But
yeah, that's helpful. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, great question. Maybe I should pause before are there any other questions on Florence before I move on?
Other questions about Florence? Okay.
I see none, so I'll move on back to the Health Professions Building. Health Professions Building is one, as it was brought up before, we'll be moving the dental clinic back to the main campus. So that is one of the groups. It will also have the EMS, EMT program. We'll have a major presence in the building, including a couple of interior bays to house their ambulances and do training for that. Medical assisting is the other primary program in there. This will complement the programs that are going on in Building 30. That's where most of them are working out of right now. So it'll augment that position. We are currently looking at 3 general areas for a building site on it. One being in the general area next to Building 30 to the west side, looking at if we can do something more towards the east, closer to Building 6, the Performing Arts Center, as well as one that was identified in the master plan on the south side of campus, up by the conference center. So we're looking at those 3 as well as doing programming on that one. Siding project it will be the first one that we'll be breaking ground on. We hope to be able to do that. And overall, that's about a $20 million project. So any questions about that?
Just a quick one. So the location of the new building is undecided?
Yeah. Well,
that's brave.
Actually, for most projects, when you build a new building, we want to look at that. We want to consider, while there were various things, as I said, in the master plan, it proposed it up on the south end of campus, which is a great site, has great access for utilities and parking, but it's not close to the existing programs. So we've created or working on creating a list of a matrix of balancing all these different things, from how it works with the different programs, public access to, and trying to weigh how big a site we can make, all of that. So that's really the first step as we program it. So any other questions about it?
The design start is underway.
It has, yes, we've been working on it. We started the first of the month. So
And you're on
with it.
And you're on track to start construction on March 22nd or March of 2022.
Bill, Laura, yep. It's great when you start a project. We're not behind yet. It's
okay.
But and it is one that it is a CMGC project, so it is one that I'm working on a request for proposals.
Help me with CMGC.
Construction Manager General Contractor.
Okay, okay. And then is GSF, is that gross square footage?
Gross square feet, yes.
Okay.
So total size of the building.
Got it. Not necessarily the entire usable part of it.
Yeah, you take the walls out of that and all of that. That's
okay.
That's the big number, the gross. So
okay, that helps me. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about this. Please do ask when you get into that alphabet soup. We're really good at that in higher ed.
And now I want to ask a question that is way beyond our purview, I think. And that is, I assume that the analysis of the community need for more health professionals has been done, and that people agree that that's really important. I certainly think it's important, but I'm assuming that this didn't come out of the air somehow.
I see Marge has her hand up, so I'm going to pass
Marge?
that one to her.
You're on mute.
Mute.
That's one of my favorite questions. Thank you for asking it. Great need. We can't put out enough dental professionals. I have the dental group from the day I landed asking me, how am I going to get more dental assistants out there, whatever. But that's not what stimulated this. What stimulated the need was the building had deteriorated. When I landed, Phil, it was a trailer. It was frightening to see that what they were being trained in. And then they moved downtown to back in 17. So we're leasing property right now when they need to be back on campus where they can use our library and all that. So the need is great. The facilities, the need is huge. So thank you for asking.
Thank you.
This is a project also that the state has granted us $8 million in matching funds. So while it's a $20 million project, 8 million of that is state funds. So this is one of the great things about the bond funds. And I think that was actually mentioned in some of the bond approvals, or, the sales pitch was that the state would give us some money based on this project.
And if I can throw one more thing in, I literally just had what I would call an emergency meeting with a large number of medical people, docs in public health, because there's a dire shortage of medical assistants, which we're also hoping to train in there, and paramedics. So this can't come quick enough. We're going to churn them out as fast as the county needs them.
Right. Well, as an old guy, I appreciate the fact that we need more people in the medical profession at all levels. And my recollection is that a few years ago, when we were looking at adding Medicaid capacity in Lane County, we were a gigantic number of physicians short. This is just a couple of years ago. I doubt that that's changed in the meantime. Yeah, thank you. Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, with that, I'll move on to the next one, which is my landscape and site framework, which is really, it's kind of a continuation of the master plan work that was done before we got here. As the planner for all of this, I thought it was really important. The master plan was great, but it really focused on the condition of the buildings and within the building footprint. And it did talk about the site work a little bit, but knowing that we're going to be doing, half dozen major restorations in a new building, I wanted to put a framework together that could tie these buildings together, as well as help guide some of the other life safety and just aesthetic improvements. One of the things that has come to my attention is that fire hydrants we have on campus are 1967. So they're a little old and tired and not working maybe as great as they should be. So we're probably going to have to replace those pretty soon. So tearing into that is probably going to tear into the water lines. I want to make sure we have appropriate fire and emergency vehicle access through the campus, which I have not yet had a chance to meet with our fire marshal, but in my looking at it as a architect, it's less than I want. So looking at that, and it'll also help tie together. One of the great things about fire lanes is it also becomes an access for disabled, those kind of things, because of the grades that they need, the wide pathways. It makes a very welcoming campus. So tying that in with some landscape planning that tie all of these projects that are going to be scattered around. The landscape framework was just one of those things that I felt was very important to help tie things together. Claire, I see your hand again.
Claire, please.
Yeah, thank you. It was not last year, pre-pandemic, I was on a team that analyzed the campus for wayfinding. And I'm wondering if any of that, the results of that work is going to come into play in the landscape work.
Yes. Yeah, there's a bunch of that stuff that I've only been lost a few times. But it's strange to point out to a lot of people as being a new person on campus, but so it's a unique piece. So thanks for that.
Mary Ann?
On page 2 of this landscape and site framework, the very last sentence under budget, are we missing a comma or a 0 there for the development documentation of landscape and site framework plan has been allocated? It either is 100,000 or it's 10,000.
It's 100,000. It should be. My apologies. That's
okay. These are
and
the
again,
numbers. This is how I like to report back, is with these numbers, and these are how I use the metrics.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. That's why I'm putting them out now. So you
appreciate it. Thank you.
You can correct me anytime. And
great. So that's a Scrivener's error, and you're going to stick another 0 in there.
It is 100,000 on that one. Yes. So
yeah. Okay.
That I've allocated for it.
Other questions, comments? Okay.
And then the final piece on this is for our parking maintenance. This is a project that is prior to the bond. Jennifer and the facilities team did an audit of all our parking and paving around the campus. So we're working on, while the campus has some transportation funds that have been used for it, they have not been able to keep up with the demand of maintenance for parking lots and paving areas. So we're working on, this is over 3 years, we're going to do mostly patch and repair. It's not really reconfiguring anything, but it is just trying to, where we can, beat it before the potholes start showing up. And in a few of those areas, we're going to have to do some pretty major reconstruction, but everything I can tell there, again, most of those parking have been in place since the original campus. So
Marianne again, I think.
So priorities and scope, the project has a balance of maintenance and repairs using the information from the 2017 evaluation as guide. The scope includes parking lots on main campus and at the airport.
Yes.
That's
For our
our
facility-
responsibility?
Yes.
We own buildings out there, yes. So we take care of, we
You
own
own
property out there.
buildings out there?
We actually lease them, but our lease is $1 per
I know,
year.
yeah, uh-huh.
And our lease agreement says that we have to take care of maintenance.
And of course, they're training people to maintain airplanes and to fly them, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that is,
program.
that's where we're doing a seal coat out there. It's not a major expense, but it is safety and
Huh, okay.
Yeah, I drove down past Building 19 recently and noted that there are places where the pavement is breaking up. It is past time to do some of this work. And that's an amateur talking. It sure seemed that way to me. Other comments, questions? Okay. Tom, what are you hoping from us on this project goals and objectives?
again, primarily this is informational at this point to let you know what's going on. I think, we'll continue to build on these, and my hope is that, my past work with these types of charters, as we get into the project, there are times that things change. And if we make a change to this, the charter is to help keep us focused. And if there is a need for a change, we'll come back to you and let you know about that should this scope change. When I first started developing these, the point was that projects during design tended to wander in what they were doing. And there was, while we're at it, a lot of those things. So for instance, the parking lot, well, as long as we're doing it, why don't we reconfigure the driveway or whatever? And if that were to happen, I would say that's a change to the charter. And we'd want to talk about that with you folks, with others, to say, hey, you didn't tell me about that.
So I do have a question on the parking lot. Does that include striping,
Yes.
refreshing of the striping? Okay.
Well, while you're at it, I'm assuming that you're going to deal with any utilities that are under the pavement before you replace the pavement. Anything you need to do.
Oh, come on. Why would we do that? No, fortunately, the areas we have do not have known utilities under them. At this point, I will put it that way. Some of the mapping of utilities is a little less than I might have hoped. But we're trying to find them.
All right, thank you. Design and construction update.
Marianne has
I'm sorry,
one more.
One more?
No, I'm sorry. I have
Please,
one
go
more.
ahead.
Mostly my question is for Marge, I think, because I'm looking at a property tax bill here for us. There was a bond in what year? And that ends in what year? And there's going to be an overlap. I just need that explained one more time.
Okay, so I don't have this committed to memory, Marianne, but like starting in 08 to 012, they when you get a bond, you cash in or you sell the bonds for the projects that you're going to do. So they did some in 08, they did some in 12, and then they built the projects. We sunset in 2024. So not that far, but I want to make sure I'm 100% correct. So I'll make sure we put this in a little document for you so you can see it.
But the new bond that we passed a year ago will show up in property tax bills in 2021.
Zach, do you want to take that one? Do you know?
Yeah, Zach. Yeah.
I'm here. Hi, Zach Evans, Budget Director for Lane Community College. So yes, the board certified taxes last June for the bond 2020. So that would have been this property tax year. So we should start seeing them in November for the first year.
November of 2021.
21.
Yes.
will reflect the passage of the bond of May of 2020. And how
That's-
many years is that bond? The one we just approved?
I think
15,
Tom and I were,
right?
yeah, Tom and I were talking about this today. I think that this goes out till 2040.
You get to 20-year.
So 2040 would be 18 years. What now? 19 years, wouldn't it?
We're going to bring
We
that
have to
back.
get
I
back
want
to
to
you on
Base.
that one.
Yeah, that would help me as I report back to the
Yeah.
community.
That would be helpful, yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring that back because you know what? We went with bond counsel. Bond counsel asked, recommended that we go extended, even if it doesn't take us so long. They said you can pull in, you can't go farther. In other words, you can
Yeah.
You
build
can
it.
prepay, but
Yeah, you don't want it. You don't want it. So let me get that exact. I know
Okay, okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
While we're talking about that subject, have the bonds been sold?
yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things that would be useful to have a look at, mostly out of curiosity, I don't think it has much to do with this committee, but you know, what the interest rate is and what the annual cost is. That you know, it's something you have. One more piece of paper, I think.
We'll bring that back.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Shall we move on to design and construction updates? I think we
Sure.
will. Tom?
So again, what I tried to do is just do a little bit of a verbal write-up for the projects we have in my priorities here. Again, I don't think I want to go through it all, but what I've tried to do is give you a summary of who's there as we continue on. I'll fill in some of the blanks here and adjust things, but kind of a high level of what the scope of the project is, who the design and general contractor are, the overall schedule. You'll note that some of them are phased projects versus a single project, particularly for some of these existing buildings. We'll go through the building kind of rather methodically because we don't have the space on campus to totally displace a full building all the time. So we'll be working our way through that to try and limit the disruption. The other thing I want to be very conscious of is, having worked on campuses for a long time, when you move a department, you want to be very conscious about that because students learn where things are. And if you start bouncing them around, they get lost and tend not to, it's bad enough to move them once and they don't go see their instructors or their advisors or things like that. But if I can limit the number of that years that there are times that happens during their career on campus, I find it very helpful for the students. So again, just one of those things that I'm trying to do, make sure we have classrooms in the same place again when they come back, and be very logical about where they're showing up. Are there questions about any of the projects listed in here? Oh,
Marge, you want to add something?
Yeah, Zach has some more information for us.
Oh, Zach, please.
I'm sorry, I'm writing about this for our budget document. So we sold two types of bonds. One of them will mature in 2040, while the others mature in 2029. The average coupon rate for the first series is 4.16%. Now that doesn't mean that that's the property tax implication.
Right.
And then the other is 1.25%.
Right. Thank you.
So Tom, just a quick question on the landscape and site framework plan description that you had in the look ahead. It lists a project value of $300,000.
That will include, right now I'm working with the landscape and site. My guess is that we're going to uncover some things like, or we're starting to uncover things like, where are the actual utilities underground?
Yeah.
And what are their conditions? You know, as I said, I discovered that some of the fire hydrants were, so there'll be more parts. So yes, you will see an amendment to that charter most likely, and some budget adjustments for that. Good catch. I'm glad somebody reads.
Do you have natural gas on campus?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And I'm assuming that the board is considering that issue as it thinks about the future. I won't say any more about it than that, but thank you. Other, did you finish what you wanted to say, Tom, about the look
I'm
ahead?
good.
Sorry?
I'm fine. I tried to write it down, so if
Right.
you guys can ask me questions like Brad did.
Okay, questions, thoughts, comments? All right, I'm going to review this stuff again, but it looks very, very thorough to me. The next item is the minutes of the last meeting, which we postponed till the end of the meeting. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review those and wants to approve them now or wants to put them off till next time. What's your pleasure?
I'd like to put them off to next time. I don't have time now to digest this.
All right. Any objection to asking that to be for the next agenda to include this time's minutes and last time's minutes? And that way everybody will have a chance to read them ahead of time. Thank you.
And Mira, can you help guide us on that electronically, how to get to the meeting minutes from January 26th and then today, whatever today is, April?
That would be really helpful, step-by-step instructions for those of us who don't use the system very often.
It is that first meeting was sort of discombobulated. It was confusing. So
Yeah.
I want to digest that and make sure that we've pulled the appropriate
Right.
minutes. So
I agree. Okay, we'll put that off. Closing items. The thing I have down here for the agenda is future meeting dates.
And
Okay.
can I just interrupt? Can everybody see my screen?
Please, yes, go.
So this is the same kind of way that I finagled it when I first gave you guys instructions on how to get to our meetings. But when you go to our active meetings, you just click on 2021, you'll see our first meeting, January 26th. You just click that, you click view the agenda. And then I added the meeting minutes here to the adjournment section because there was no natural place kind of to put it otherwise. But you can just click those minutes there and then it'll open and you'll be able to see them. But it's always, they just live under this meetings in the active section.
So Mira, one more time, if you don't mind, just repeat
Yeah.
it.
So that plus item there with the kind of tan bar is the one that you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the thing I missed. I didn't realize that actually had something under it.
Yeah, so even though we didn't have our first meeting in board docs, our fabulous, one of our fabulous workers, Brett, added all the information for our first meeting in here so that we could retroactively go back and look at it. So January 26th is here. And so these were all of our agenda items for that first meeting. And then this last one, closing items adjournment, that's where the minutes are for that meeting that you can review. And I will do the same thing for this meeting. I will put the meeting minutes and this very last thing in adjournment again, so you'll be able to review those in the same way, just for consistency's sake.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Does that answer your question, Marianne? Yeah, I think she's saying yes. Okay.
Okay, great.
I'm
Thank you.
saying yes, and thank you, Mira.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Again.
This is helpful. So we're down to the item of future meeting dates. And I will have to confess that I've forgotten whether we agreed on a future meeting date or whether Austin remembers that. Tom, where are we on that?
We have not set a date. We had talked about it. What I am intending to do is issue these documents, a comparable set of documents quarterly that we will post here and we'll issue it. I suggest that we, as a group, we hold a formal meeting like this twice a year. So we do every other quarter. And that when I post the report, we gather comments maybe by email. I guess I hadn't thought that part of it totally through, but that would be my suggestion.
But a couple of questions from me. Does the committee have the authority to call itself back into order for a special meeting if it wants to? And I'm assuming the board can anytime it wants us to meet again.
Great question. I'm not sure. I see a hand from Claire. Maybe she wants.
Claire, and I don't know whether twice a year is often enough, whether it ought to be more often or less often. If you had the authority to call yourself back into order at a different time than was agreed upon, that would take care of the problem of trying to set meetings too close together and not having much to do. Claire, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I cannot answer that question, but I would like to propose that we, given the volume of documentation that we're supposed to read and actually try to process and digest, that we meet quarterly. Otherwise, we're being asked to look at a whole lot of material, and we had a little less than a week to actually plow through it all. So it feels to me like quarterly is not too often, considering the amount of material we should be looking at.
Can I address that, please?
Tom, you were planning to communicate that material to us quarterly anyway, were you not?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, somebody else wanted to talk, and I missed it.
Can I address the board's intent?
Please,
Chair?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, yes.
So the board's intent was that the Oversight Committee meet at least, and we wrote the charter that at least once a year, but our intent was for the committee to meet twice a year in our conversations with intervening reports. So that was what we had discussed, was meeting twice a year. So just as he laid it out, you kind of met an additional time because the January meeting was kind of the kickoff. So meeting in April, report in July, meeting in October. That was our intent, to not have 4 meetings a year. I think you may also want to recognize that it's going to be moving more slowly in the beginning. This is a multi-year process, right? And it will pick up speed at some point, but I concur with Claire that it's important that people are given adequate time to read and review documents.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a suggestion, and I'd like to propose the idea that Tom is in the best position to flag for us when the series of projects have reached a stage that's useful for us to look at as a whole. It takes staff time to put all this information together and get it to us. So I would really believe that he's in the best spot to advise us down the road that says, in a month, I would like to hold a meeting because things have changed or an update is due, rather than be arbitrary about it and just say, oh, we're going to meet in July and October. I think the needs that he will identify really will drive the schedule based on the work they're doing or the changes that come along. So again, I have faith in the staff to help us, provide the information or to provide the analysis of the information they give us, but their information has to be timely. If they don't give us the right information, we can't really draw the right, the accurate conclusions. So,
Tom, thoughts about that?
I greatly appreciate that. I can do that. I think I want to work on that quarterly schedule. I see Marge has her hand up,
Oh,
so I'm
sorry.
going to let her.
That's okay. I just want to say that I think in the future, we should be able to get you materials 2 weeks, because this is a lot and it's in its own little lingo. So we'll shoot for an earlier reading time. And then the second thing is I really support the 2 meetings with the 2 reportings, because Tom and I had a lot of conversations about this. We want things to we want to have enough done to report out. There's not much to say in 2 to 3 months. There's a lot. I think there should be much more to report out in a 6-month period. Quarterly is more making you up to date. So we're good with, I think, just giving you some quarterlies, but there should be more meat and potatoes in 6 months.
Really, we're covering a year
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Marianne?
Lisa, a question for Lisa Fragalia. What is the Board of Education's role in monitoring the progress of the bond projects and the metrics associated with start to finish?
So all the documents that you reviewed today, we've also reviewed them. So we are reviewing documents in the same manner that you are reviewing documents. Additionally, we will be given information about RFPs and will approve contracts. That information won't necessarily come to this group. That's the role of the board to approve the contracts. But I would hope that you would receive information. I think the information would be very relevant to come to this group that aligns with ensuring that the intent that was communicated for this bond is being upheld. But we're reviewing the same types of information. But you've got many more eyes here looking at the information. And I already heard some things tonight that helped, I was going to leave earlier, honestly, but I stayed because I was hearing great thinking. So thank you all very much. And be sure to think about how you're going to report to us, because that will be really important.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate what Marge had to say about the pace of project reporting. I wonder if we might not spend a lot of time about next meeting dates right now, but have Tom sort of guide us on when you determine that there's a chunk of information that needs to get to this committee so we can decipher it.
Yeah.
What I'll do and what I promised the board is to do this quarterly update. So what we'll look at is, as we pull this together, we'll try and pull you to find a date when it's appropriate. And we'll be targeting that, with the quarterly every other quarter. So we're 6 months. So we're probably roughly in October right now would be the next meeting. I think the board, maybe we need to look at when the appropriate annual report is to the board. But it may be that we talk about that in October, get that information from the board so that you can make that report as well. Does that make sense?
It does.
As a detail, unless there's an objection, I think we should follow the procedure that we did for the specific scheduling of this meeting, which, as I recall, was something like a doodle poll. And then Austin, that would be Roger now, and I met with you to actually pick a date and review the agenda. Does that make sense?
Works for me.
We're talking at that point, we're talking about a period within a couple of weeks after you've made that determination that it's done.
Yeah, no, it's about a month-long process to put it all together. As
exactly.
Brad very appropriately pointed out, it's not just something I do. And Mary and I didn't put this together last week.
No, no, that's obvious. There's a lot of work to be done in doing this. The next item on our agenda is adjournment, but I want to ask if there are any final questions or comments today.
I just want to put a shout out to Mira Mason. Where are you? I can't find you. Thanks for answering my questions in such a timely manner, and your kind and respectful responses to my questions. Thank you.
May I second that?
That's very nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good. Well, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.